Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel and welcome to our cozy little corner of the internet. I'm Pen and today I'll be reading the one-shot Now I'm Taken, The Night Has Me by chuuuyq. You'll see on the title card, but CHUUYQ. I don't know how to pronounce that, so I'm sorry, dear author, but this one-shot is a little under 4,500 words. I really like this one shot. Anyway, here is the summary. No trigger warnings, by the way. Perhaps I just wanted to see Chuuuyq like the old times. He smiled, and Chuuuyq felt like a knife was in his gut, and all the blood was leaking out. That was leaking out of the wound was turning into anger. The volcano had reached its climax, and nothing could stop the fiery rain. You're the one who left. Chuuuyq tried his best not to yell. He didn't want Dazai to see his composure shatter, like all the little shards embedding its back into the eyes had. You don't get to have the fucking old times. Could you crucify a man for hoping? Dazai should not look so clean so ethereal for a person who was twisting a knife further and further into the gut of another soul's entire being. This, as I said, is a one-shot. I really enjoyed this, and sorry for not posting the past couple of days. I'm just trying to space out the uploads because I'm running out of fix. Hang on, I forgot the name of the other one. It's not Love If You Run When It's Hard. I've only got 2 more chapters of that, and I do not have anything else stored up. So I'm just going to space out the uploads for a bit because I don't know what I'm going to be reading next, and I don't want to leave you with just like 3 or 4 weeks with nothing. So anyway, hope you guys enjoy, and I'll see you guys into the fic. There's a sickening feeling of familiarity when a person knows you too well, and when you know them too well, and they weren't always the wrong person. It was no surprise that once Dazai had reshown his face to the world, and more importantly, the darker side of it, Mori would find a way to bring his most sterling creation back together. It wasn't a secret that the man wanted nothing more than to get his claws back around Dazai's throat, and Chuuuyq knew that when it came to this matter, for all his own strength and aversion, he was still powerless against his own boss. There were some things that even a leading executive like Chuuuyq could not disobey. Unavoidably, at the end of the day, the mafioso was still just a slimy mafia dog, and a dog must always heed its master. It was a week or so after the guild had fallen and that Soukoku finally was to be reunited in an official mission. Even as he felt his blood boiling, all Chuuuyq could do was bite his own tongue and give, as Mori gave him the rundown. As he stood as sternly as he could muster against the poor mafia leader, and tried to appear as if he couldn't feel his insides aiming to claw their own way out of his throat. Chuuuyq didn't have to wonder how Dazai was reacting to the news from his own involvement with Fukuzawa. He knew the brunette would be spinning doleful excuses and pretty little lies like he always did. Chuuuyq too wanted to argue his case. Why did the two most highly skilled of their respective organizations have to do such a mundane task? A simple stakeout and information gathering of a suspected guild ally. There were countless others that were just as capable. Regardless, Chuuuyq kept his mouth shut. He knew what Mori had in mind. This was a test. He wasn't stupid enough to not realize that, nor was he stupid enough to not notice the sparkle of something known in the man's dark eyes as his lips scurried around his instructions. An icky sense of nostalgia crept around in his insides. The eerie familiarity to their first mission clicked around in his mind. 15, full of hormones and energy. They spent more time fighting than they did working. When things went wrong, and towards the end, when something so earth-shattering wrong was awakened. Chuuuyq had woken up, aching and bleeding, and knowing that this was the aftermath. This was the start of something terrible. And each time he woke up, after temporarily giving the reins to this Armageddon of a god inside him, he knew he was too deep to be able to see the other side. But then Dazai left, and Chuuuyq wished his being was lying to him when he missed the feeling of Dazai washing the blood off his ungloved hands. They knew this reunion was inevitable. The moon rose and fell, and when it was at its highest, with its nightly eye at the brightest, the old shadows were brought to the forefront brought forth in the luminescence. They sunk under the cover of. They slunk. Never seen that word. They slunk under the cover of starlight as the Port Mafia did so often. For once, Dazai didn't speak or torment him as they briskly crossed the city to the warehouse district on the edge of the metropolis. It wasn't like they hadn't been alone together since Dazai resurfaced, but they both knew it was something else when they were not in the middle of fighting for their lives and encompass in one of Dazai's schemes. Besides, even if they were to speak, what was there to say? It was years ago that Dazai had defected. What business could they have left with each other now? They arrived at the designated building and set out in opposite directions to do an initial sweep and surveyed the surroundings before they settled down for the night watch. The chill was alive, and Chuuuyq could feel it slapping him across the face with each rush of wind it blew. Still, Chuuuyq would not let this hold him back as he soundlessly made his way around the area. There was little significance to note, and one would be sure they had the wrong place if it weren't for the reliable source, that or carefully concealed surveillance around the building. While there was no visible lights yet, some movement could be heard from inside. Chuuuyq dropped a few bugs around the place and headed back to the unspoken base. It was atop a nearby building, and Chuuuyq wasn't looking at all surprised when he found Dazai back already, lounging against a rust-eaten air conditioning unit with a perfect view of the targeted establishment. Blissful expression on his face, while Chuuuyq could feel the cold right down to his bones, even through all his layers. It irked him more than it should. Chuuuyq grew sick and broke the silence and barked roughly. "Hey, freak, did you actually sweep your area or were you too lazy to finish?" Chuuuyq watched as one of Dazai's eyes opened and the man glanced lazily in his direction. "Some of us aren't tiny little fairies with short legs that can cover ground at a quicker pace." Dazai's lack of taunt seemed to not last long, and Chuuuyq mourned the silence of before. With a scoff, Chuuuyq turned his back to the other male and decided to begin setting up their larger listening device out of the briefcase that he had brought along with him. Anything to distract himself from the infuriating person a few feet away from him. Excitingly enough, it was expensive and top of the line, supplied, of course, by the Port Mafia. Chuuuyq knew that it was a non-pulse nonplussed, whatever that word is, that Dazai hadn't bothered to set up in the time he had been waiting for him to return. Dazai changed in many ways. His idleness was forever the same. No visible lights, movement inside. I spotted a few guards in neighbouring buildings keeping an eye out. Chuuuyq ran Dazai down. He knew Dazai had more than likely, seen the same insight as him, but he was determined to stay as professional as possible. He refused to fall back into the easy team that they once had. Yet, maybe easy was too kind of a word. At the very least, their combination was effortless and obvious. Dazai merely hummed in reply. Chuuuyq pulled the coat off his shoulders tighter around him, in an attempt to prevent the harsh wind from getting under his clothes, and slid on the headphones of the kit to begin their formal surveillance. He promptly ignored the feeling of Dazai's hawk-like eyes digging into his back. He knew the other would get more restless at some point. Surveillance had never been Dazai's favourite. But Chuuuyq wasn't about to humour him. He was out of the corner of his vision. Just when he turned his head to the case beside him, he could see Dazai's eyes had shut once more, and his face had tilted up to the sky as if he was basking in the moonlight. Dazai had always been a creature of the night. Chuuuyq knew this and had no better place. He had no better place than in the cold darkness. He had never looked more truly at home than under the light of the half moon. Chuuuyq redirected his stare, ignoring the probability of Dazai's notice. He needed to focus on the task at hand. The device picked up footsteps and the occasional cough or sneeze, but nothing of importance, and Chuuuyq was mentally slaughtering Mori for this assignment. If this really were a test, why did it have to be so boring? Wouldn't it make more sense to put them in action and see if they remelded into that old, well-oiled machine? Maybe Mori was simply testing to see if the two of them would survive the night without ending each other's existence. Testing to see if there was really a chance of that Soukoku could be reborn. And if Chuuuyq wasn't so aware of how important the truth of the count was, he would simply off Dazai to give Mori his answer. What's Chuuuyq been up to since I've been gone? Chuuuyq himself almost startled at the sudden question and immediately bristled. Though simultaneously he felt a pang deep inside him. A memory, perhaps? The interrogations, the money spent, the beatings, the search parties, the endless nights, tired mornings, empty belly, bruised body. The storm Dazai had left in his wake was nothing short of a typhoon. Something so fitting for the disaster of a man that was Dazai. And yet, Chuuuyq could not help but ache that filled his chest. The ache that was less anger and more so something similar to a sadness. This alone bubbled and rage inside him, too similar to the wrath of Arahabaki unleashed. But Chuuuyq would not blink at this. He would not surrender to Dazai the satisfaction he knew the other one was starving for. None of your business, mackerel. Shut up and let me work. But Chuuuyq, it's been so long since we worked together like this, and we both know the warehouse isn't going to be fruitful tonight. Dazai whined in usual Dazai fashion, the suspicious kind that made Chuuuyq wonder what the other had plotted. Yet the familiar drawl turned and churned in Chuuuyq's stomach, in ways he wouldn't acknowledge. He whipped his head around. Leave if you want to, but some of us have are actually dedicated to our job. Chuuuyq hissed. Dazai was being too loud for a stakeout mission. The mafioso refused to let that imbecile ruin a good chance at intel, even if he knew deep down at some of what Dazai said was probably right. After working jobs like this for so long, it became apparent that when one would be a bust from the start. Nevertheless, Chuuuyq wasn't about to actually start agreeing with the mackerel, not until the day he died. Dazai ignored what he said. I'm cold. Chibi needs to warm me up. How about he goes out and get me a nice warm blanket? Dazai spouts, still whining just as loud. Chuuuyq felt his eye twitch in annoyance. Quit being so fucking loud and get one yourself, you waste of fucking good air. He snarled back, aiming to glare Dazai into silence like that would actually work. The other had a stupid and fake pout on his face, which was ruined by the way the corners of his mouth couldn't help but twitch up. His eyes glimmering with amusement, with something darker. My legs hurt. We have to travel so far for this. Dazai complained louder, and Chuuuyq sighed and closed his eyes to rub at the bridge of his nose in hopes of retaining some sanity. But it was for nothing. It was well known that all sanity could not help but be lost in the presence of Dazai Osamu. So, Chuuuyq chose to ignore him and turn back to the task at hand. They were still on a job. Chuuuyq didn't think it would be an appropriate time to beat the other one up. Besides, he would grow bored soon enough. Patience, he had to remind himself. Dazai actually quieted for a while, perhaps an hour give or take, and Chuuuyq thanked his lucky stars, though, just as he was about to contemplating, there we go. Just as he was contemplating whether or not he should call it and go home for the night, he heard Dazai moving behind him. Dazai's footsteps were light, but the night still had the upper hand in silence, so, to Chuuuyq, they sounded like thunder. Dazai stopped right behind him. You won't find anything tonight, he said plainly. Chuuuyq could hear the cold boredom in his tone. The mask falling. He never liked when Dazai spoke like this. The facades and the persona he put on, the rawness of Dazai's nothingness always made Chuuuyq want to shiver. But at Dazai's words, Chuuuyq was confused for a moment, before he really had a look at the whole picture and realized that Dazai was not lying. Chuuuyq should have guessed from the glee in Mori's eyes when he was assigning the mission. Dazai's overpowering lack of care for this task, or the active deadness of the place, and the fact that the guild should not have time to establish such a large number of allies in the time they had been here. The Port Mafia monitored all suspicious activity and groups, and they would not have missed something as shiny as the guild's touch. Chuuuyq wanted to groan as the beginning of the formation of another headache rose. He wanted to turn around and drop-kick the other across the city, but he also wanted to know what they were doing here, though Chuuuyq suspected he would not like the answer to that. As he stood up, Dazai still loomed over him, but Chuuuyq took any height he could get. Are you going to tell me why the fuck we're here then, or should I just fuck off home already? Dazai smiled some painfully fake thing and answered, I didn't think Chuuuyq would come if I told him the truth. You know where I live. What's stopping your shitty ass from breaking in this time? Chuuuyq didn't want me there. You're not wrong. In the back of his mind, Chuuuyq could not tell if his words were being honest or simply another part of his stupid games, a part of the plan to capture, because he needed something and for all that his big talk, he never had the words to ask. Knew he had no place to ask, but who was he kidding? On the planet, Daza would actually give a damn about that. New job, new coat, same old empty eyes. People could only change so much. Chuuuyq knew very well. The mafioso pondered. Perhaps it was just a reality that every spoken word held both honesty and falsehood. Maybe they were intertwined and not as easy to separate as most people seem to think. When Dazai didn't say anything else, Chuuuyq gritted his teeth and asked again, "Speak, Dazai. Why are we here?" "Perhaps I just wanted to see Chuuuyq again, like the old times." He smiled, and Chuuuyq felt like a knife was in his gut, and all the blood was leaking out of the wound. That wound was turning to anger. The volcano had reached its climax, and nothing could stop this tyrant of fiery rain. "You're the one who left." Chuuuyq tried his best to not yell. He didn't want Dazai to see his composure shatter like this. Shatter like all the little shards embedding itself into the back of the eyes he had. "You do not get to have the old fucking times." Could you crucify a man for hoping? Dazai should not look so clean, so ethereal, for a person who was twisting a knife further and further into the gut of another soul's entire being. Yeah, Moon touched Dazai like it aimed to wash his skin clear of with its light, and the wind carted through Dazai's hair like he was something so soft, someone too soft to deserve rougher treatment. Chuuuyq could feel the dirt and grime that probably leftover blood seeping into his pores as he resented the way the man stood before him, so close but not close enough for Chuuuyq to ever be able to touch him. There was a time where perhaps he could have, where perhaps there would be. There was a time where perhaps he could have, where perhaps there would have been a better end to their story, but that time had long since passed, and something other than that had to be written instead of ink. In fact, in something that could not be so easily erased by pretty words that are nice to hear. Sure, Chuuuyq could punch and kick and rip the other to shreds, but no one could genuinely touch Dazai without his permission. And with that filth that Chuuuyq carried, how could he ever be one to do so now? Dazai was too high and mighty. He always had been. But now, more than ever, since he really had left, he had left the sewers that was the Port Mafia, and he had left the subhuman that was Chuuuyq. He was truly golden now. He washed himself clean of all that, and Chuuuyq didn't dare wish to do the same. All Chuuuyq wanted was to belong, and all Dazai wanted was to be entertained. He would never stay long for Chuuuyq. Stay for long, and Chuuuyq and everyone else were fools to have believed otherwise. They both knew their place and where they belonged, and Chuuuyq didn't wish to uproot anything so solid. Chuuuyq was a pest, and Dazai ran the city. He was always the one that was going to be exterminated. Like Mori crucified a man for trying. Chuuuyq knew it was low, but that was the aim. The one weakness that he knew Dazai was. Wow, thanks English. English hasn't been working well for me today, so fuck. Like Mori crucified a man for trying. Chuuuyq knew it was low, but that was his aim. The one weakness he knew of Dazai that that was the one he was going to hit. The same way Dazai had always hit a sore spot he knew too well that Chuuuyq had, always shoved blades in gaps of his armor. Something darker than onyx flashed in what was once open eyes, the kind of dark that laughed in the moonlight when attempting to bounce off everything it covered. A deep pit, a void where Dazai should see from, but he knew Dazai was not seeing him. He knew Dazai was not seeing the darkness either. All Dazai was seeing was red as he shoved Chuuuyq with strength that shocked the air from Chuuuyq's lungs faster than his back hitting the metal of the fire escape door behind him. That was low for garbage even like you, Chuuuyq. His voice was not loud. His voice held nothing more than his words. Nothing more than Dazai. And Dazai, in his true form, succeeded much more than his reputation in the Mafia led on. As cliche as it was, the King of Darkness was more fitting of a name than Dazai Osamu. As Chuuuyq noted the snake of fear slither alive in his veins. He made Dazai angry before, but never like this, and Chuuuyq stilled for a moment. Everything stilled. Even the cold wind held its breath in the presence of Dazai's anger. And perhaps the absence of noise from the air was why the quake in Chuuuyq's voice sounded as clear as a summer's day. "What are you gonna do?" Chuuuyq asked darkly, as if he didn't know what he had coming for him. This useless man in front of him, a man once... Wow, my brain. This useless man in front of him, a man he once had called his friend, was about to end the life of a god and its vessel alongside it. About to end the life of Chuuuyq. The worst part, Chuuuyq knew he could. But as if a coin flipped over, just as quickly as a red-hot flash of murderous intent had entered Dazai, it seemed to leave. Yet Dazai didn't seem to move. He stood there, hands fisted in Chuuuyq's shirt, and stared at the redhead in front of him. Chuuuyq felt naked, laid bare, a spotlight upon his exposed skin, as the other looked dead in the eyes with his hands let go. Tell Mori the mission was a bust. Dazai turned and left, eerie silence left in his wake. Chuuuyq stood frozen, just what was in Dazai's eyes. He wanted to laugh as his brain spewed words like regret. Dazai was no human than Chuuuyq. He was not capable of something so mortal. Perhaps I wanted to see Chuuuyq like the old times. Dazai's voice rang in Chuuuyq's head like trumpets announcing war. A month had passed, a month without a sound from Dazai. It didn't feel like how it did after Dazai left the Port Mafia. The radio silence was heavier, more pointed. Chuuuyq felt on edge. They fought like rabid hounds constantly throughout the entirety of knowing each other, but after the last mission, it felt like those blunt jabs were now poison-tipped knives. Chuuuyq felt the hair on the back of his neck standing tall each time he left the house, and he had enough. He really shouldn't be doing this, he knew. It was incredibly stupid and possibly dangerous. And yet, still, he stood outside Dazai's rundown apartment, the address of which he gained from Okagawa, who knew for reasons he'd not like to know. The address of which he gained from Okagawa, who knew for reasons he'd not like to know. Dazai's windows were absences of light, but Chuuuyq knew it was not for lack of residence. He knew Dazai's affinity for the dark like no other. Chuuuyq would lie ferociously if anyone claimed he did, but he steadied himself before he floated up to the window and yanked it open with a snap of the lock. He didn't care to be quiet, nor did he care about the damage. He simply wanted answers to the burning questions, and he would not raise higher from the depths of his own mind. Darzai wasn't in the main room, but he saw the bathroom light on and waited for the man to surface. "No more hiding," he said in his head. My throat is getting dry, so I'm going to take a sip of drink. Okay. Back to this. Sorry I left you on a bit of a cliffhanger. I just realised that now. Sorry. The door opened and the lights from the bathroom haloed Darzai's blank face as they made eye contact. Chuuuyq wondered, really, if this was a mistake. Neither spoke for a bit. Finally, "A little family must have mistaken my window for his own. He probably should dance along home," Darzai said, in what Chuuuyq could tell was his half-hearted attempt of his usual jibes. "Stop fucking around, Darzai, I want to talk." Chuuuyq crossed his arms to stop Darzai from seeing the shake and could not help but glare, despite the fact that he told himself he wasn't coming to start a fight. Old habits really do die hard, he supposed. I don't remember you being receptive last time I tried." Darzai leveled his eyes coldly. A chill ran down Chuuuyq's spine, and he wasn't sure if it was the breeze from the broken, now open window, or the man's stare. "You cornered me into that. Quit playing games already." "The floor is yours, Chu." The other cooed. I'm just going to say cooed. The other cooed back, walking over to the kitchen stool, sitting down and leaning his back against the counter. He would have the perfect demeanor of someone who, without care, if it weren't for the stony look soaking his shadow caressed face. Chuuuyq took a deep breath and in that moment regretted every singularity that had ever contributed to the suicidal idea of showing up in the stump of a place in front of this freak show for a person in first place. What? Chuuuyq took a deep breath in that moment regretted every singularity that had contributed to the suicidal idea of showing up in the stump of a place in front of this freak show of a person in first place, but still, when Chuuuyq was determined, he would not back down. There we go. So he continued, "What I said, I shouldn't have." Anyone could hear the clenched teeth as he shoved the words out. "Is that really you, Chibi?" Darzai mocked. "I don't believe I've ever heard an apology out of Chuuuyq." He pretended to ponder as Chuuuyq clenched his fist hard to avoid punching him hard enough to ever forget this happened. "That's certainly rich coming from you freak." Darzai let out a hollow laugh at this. "Are you just here to argue, Chuuuyq? Because I'm quite tired of that. I thought you would be grateful I'd left you alone, but you're here crawling back like a mutt who lost its owner." Darzai smiled eerily. He knew the effect of the words would have on the other. He knew what button to push, what words to use, how to slink beneath Chuuuyq's skin like a parasite looking for a host to infect and kill. Patience, Chuuuyq reminded himself again. Something he figured he would be doing a lot this night. Despite himself, Chuuuyq sucked in a breath to keep his composure. With Darzai's cruel eyes on him like a hawk, he spoke back. I am here to apologize. I shouldn't have brought up your friend, but you had no right to think you could walk back into my life like nothing. I thought Chuuuyq had missed me. Dazai smirked lazily, acting as if the fire in his eyes weren't turning his brown irises red. I think we both know it's you who did. Chuuuyq growled out. The muddled thought lying in wait at the base of his skull had unnerved itself, and Chuuuyq finally understood. Dazai had put that useless mission together in an attempt to pull Chuuuyq back to his side. The bastard wanted him back at his side. Chuuuyq couldn't believe Dazai had actually missed him. The redhead could see his ears blending into his hair. Dazai was silent. What are you going to deny? With a swift movement, Dazai bridged the gap between him till Chuuuyq stopped mid-sentence, so he could whip his head up to stare at the other in shock. You should leave, Dazai said quietly. But Chuuuyq wasn't backing down, and maybe if he was as smart as the other man, he would have noticed the way Dazai's cheeks had started to colour. No. Fine then. Dazai grabbed Chuuuyq's face in his hands and pressed their lips together harshly. All the pieces fell into place. After a second or two of overcoming the shock, Chuuuyq kissed back. Messy and hard and lovely and perfect, and nothing like Chuuuyq thought kissing Dazai would be. Nothing like the deep depths of his conscience could construct. Chuuuyq grabbed Dazai's hair and pulled him closer, refusing to let the man stay any further away. Dazai's hands migrated to Chuuuyq's hip bones, and the moonlight watched on. Dazai pushed him, kinder than Chuuuyq thought he was capable of, towards the wall, and their lips moved in sync. Finally, coming out for a gasp of air, Chuuuyq's head fell back against the wall, and Dazai moved to his neck. Dazai, stop talking. Dazai breathed against the sensitive skin below Chuuuyq's ear. What? Chuuuyq gasped, and by some god or devil, Dazai relented, dropping his head to Chuuuyq's collarbone, not moving away. He could feel Dazai's cold hands on his waist and his hot breath on his neck. And for some reason, Chuuuyq thought he would cry. You're such a yappy little dog, Dazai said, but Chuuuyq couldn't hear any of the anger or blankness. But Chuuuyq couldn't hear any anger or blankness in his voice. Only something similar to fondness. Chuuuyq knew could not be right. How long? Chuuuyq's breath was still heavy. Dazai seemed to freeze for a second before he answered. Too long. Chuuuyq almost choked, as if attempting to distract himself. Dazai bit his collarbone. Mackerel. Chuuuyq stayed over that night, and many more nights following. Okay, everyone, that was I'm Taken, The Night Has Me by chuuuyq. Yeah. And once again, I don't know how to say that name, so I'm sorry, dear author, but I absolutely love this fic. The way that it just switched into Soukoku, I loved it. I just realised that I didn't specify that it was a Soukoku fic at the start, so yeah, sorry for that. But I really loved this. Thank you for letting me read this. I really enjoyed it, and I hope you guys all enjoyed it too. I'll see you guys later, and make sure to take care of yourself. Bye.